Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to draw the facial features on the human face and how they line up proportionally. So we're going to start out with the shape for the head that is going to be an upside down egg shape. Sometimes people, I think find it easier to start with a circle. So if you can start with a circle, this might be helpful. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. But once you have that, then you can add sort of the bottom of the egg shape like this, and that will help you maybe get the egg shape to start off with. I'm going to erase that circle line that's within there. And that does look like a nice upside down egg shape. I'm going to go with that. And the first line that we're going to make with this is a guideline to help us make things symmetrical. So I'm going to go right down the center with a line of symmetry. Obviously the human face is symmetrical left to right, with the exception of hair or any other distinguishing characteristics like freckles or moles or anything like that. We are now going to make the line for the eyes. The eye line is halfway from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin. Mine just so happens to be 6 inches, so I'm going to draw a little mark at 3 and have that go right across. A lot of times people think that the eye line is not halfway or slightly above halfway. Those people probably also forget that there's a hairline, the forehead, eyebrows, and then the eyes. So it is halfway when the eyes are on the face. From the eye line to the chin, we are going to make a mark for the nose. The base of the nose is going to be halfway from the eye line to the chin. Again, that is the base of the nose. The lip line. The lip line is the only one that's not halfway. It's 1/3 of the way from the nose to the chin. So approximately 1/3 of the way you can measure and estimate is going to be the mark for where the lips meet. Okay, moving right along. And of course, if I'm going too fast, you can pause and rewind at any point. The eyes, where do they go vertically? We figured that out with this eye line here. Now how do they go, where do they go horizontally? A trick to keep in mind is 5 eyes across. The width of one eye is also the same as the distance between the eyes, and if you're looking at someone straight on without any turn or rotation, it's going to be the same from the distance of the side of the head as that width of the eye. So what I'm going to do is just going to estimate here and measure. I think I was already going to be a little too small. Make that a little larger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one's looking a little wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 eyes across. We'll place those eyes horizontally on that line. Let's start with the eyes. They, I believe, are one of the hardest features to do. I think the difficulty lies in the symmetry of the eyes. Starting at the eye, the corner of the eye, and we're going to do the left eye first, our left side, this figure's right side. We're going to start on the eye line. We're going to come up first for the top of the eyelid there, and then slope down to the corner. Now, I believe that the high point is going to be slightly more towards the middle than, slightly more towards the right side than in the middle. And then it's going to slope down gracefully over here. On the inside is going to be a bump. That is a tear duct, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone has those. So make sure that you include the tear duct, and then it's going to come down just less dramatic than the top line. It's a little more subtle for the bottom eyelid. And now I don't think that you'll ever see someone's full iris. It will be covered over by the eyelid. So I'm going to draw the iris in here, the colored part of the eye. It is a circle and is slightly covered by the top eyelid and almost goes down to touch the bottom eyelid. Within the center of that, obviously, is the pupil. And I always like to do an eyelid line right above the eye, following the same shape as the eye, because when a person's eye is open, you will see that lid line. It's just one of those little things that makes it look a little more realistic. And speaking of making it look realistic, we are going to add the colored part of the eye, the iris striations, these little lines that seem to radiate from the center of the eye. And again, we are adding a little bit of realism by leaving a little part of this unshaded, and that's going to look like a white glare, right? So that glare indicates that your eyeball has that thin film of moisture on top. I'm going to start erasing a bit of the guidelines within the eye, because now in the whites of the eyes we are going to aim to have one little addition of realism, and that is shading that is in the corners, because your eye is a sphere, your eyeball is a sphere, and to make it look round we add a little shading on the left and the right side just to indicate that it is round. I always put a little extra from the top eyelid as well. That makes it look a little bit more realistic to me. And so I'm going to do that again on the right side, following the same steps that I just went over with you. And go ahead and do this on your paper as well. Don't forget the eyelid, or I'm sorry, the tear duct on the inside, the bump near the nose. Remember, once we did this side, it was the bump on the inside. On this side, we have to flip it and make sure that looks like a mirror image. Iris colored part of the eye. Pupil. And now with the reflective part, that little white gleam in the eye, you want to make sure that it's on the same side. This is the top right here, so I'm going to put it in the top right here. That's one thing that might be different, because if you're trying to make the mirror image, it would be obviously flipped, but with the light source coming from the top right, or assuming, that's where the gleam will be no matter what. Eyelid line as well. And continue onward. Let's do the nose. The nose is very difficult to show that it's three-dimensional, and because it was so difficult, that's why the Egyptians actually did mostly profiles, because they didn't know how to actually draw a nose coming forward. So you are already one step ahead of the Egyptians. Moving a guideline down from the inside corner of the eyes, it just so happens that that eye width that's right there is also the width of the nose. So we are going to put two nostrils on either side with a slight line in the middle that goes down to touch the base. So here we go. I'm going to start with a nostril over here. I'm going to bend down slightly to touch there, and then go back up and hit the other nostril as well. I do just a little bit of an increased shading for where the nostril, the hole in the nose is. And then the outside is with the part that's going to sort of swoop around there, not exactly touching. Okay, it's not exactly touching the line that we just drew, but those three simple lines will be enough to get a realistic looking nose facing forward. You may hear a bell in a second, so please ignore that. There might be some commotion. There it is. I apologize. But let's move on. Let's keep going. We have the lips next. Another set of guidelines dropping down from the pupils this time, all the way to the bottom on both sides. That's going to be the corners of your mouth. The corners of your mouth, you think about a long stretched out letter M, and that will give you a really nice upper lip. From the corners all the way up, the dip in the middle is the creation of the M shape there. And then that guideline that we originally made is actually where the lips meet. The second line for the lips. Do the same thing as the top, but just a little bit more subtle, okay? A little less dramatic. And then the bottom lip will close off everything here. I always find that it kind of fades by the corners, but you can go all the way to the corners if you'd like. And again, you know, average human proportions here. Everyone has different sized shape. Everything, noses, lips, ears, eyes, eyebrows, all that stuff. But again, this is just an average human. Okay, we're going to continue on, create the ears as well. Here we go. After the ears, we'll do eyebrows and then hair. One criticism that I sometimes get when I draw this ear is that they are quite large. Another thing that they line up with is the eye line. That's where the ears start. And before you do sort of mention that perhaps my ears are large, what I want you to do is do this to your own ear, measure it top to bottom, and then slide it out front and see where it lines up with other features. Mine goes from the eyebrow to the base of the nose. Now I'm not going to go all the way up here for the top ridge of the ear, but I am going to go up, turn the corner, bend in, and then connect for the lobe. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You don't have to go out too far. It might look like a circus peanut stuck to the side of your head if you do that. Bend down for the top ridge, bend in, and then connect for the lobe. Again, looking like it's going all the way down to the base of the nose. Now, ears are very weird, admittedly. And I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance on just how to add a bit of shading to make it look more realistic. What you're going to do is you're going to start here, slightly drop down from the eye line. And you're going to start with a perimeter around the ear, like this. And what that shows is that's kind of the top ridge of the ear. And that's going to fade by the time it gets to the lobe right there. You can do that on both sides, starting just slightly under and going around the perimeter of the ear at the top for the top ridge, fading when it gets to the lobe. And now in the inside of the ear, there's a Y shape here. I don't know that it's going to be all that visible from the front view, but the top will receive some shading like this. And then this part goes into the inner ear. And this part is that little tab on the inside of your ear that protects your ear canal. And then what you're going to do is you're going to then add a bit of shading above that as well. There's a little part that's not shaded, and that's that Y shape that's on the inside of your ear. But do a little bit of shading at the top, a little bit of shading behind that sort of tab shape, and then you'll get a somewhat realistic looking ear from the front view. Now, obviously when we draw the side view, that's going to end up looking a lot more realistic. So shading on the upper ridge there, if you can indicate that bit of that Y shape, but it's okay if you don't. A little bit of shading on the inside here, and that will effectively create the shading for the ear. Again, not much we can do with the front view, it's just not visible. The shading for the lobe, you can make it look a little rounder at the bottom, just by adding a little bit of shading to the base of the earlobe. And that's it for the ears right there. We're going to add more shading later, especially when it comes to the nose. Let's hit those eyebrows though. I don't have a hard and steady rule on the eyebrows. I think that eyebrows are actually quite expressive. You know, you put your eyebrows facing in like this, he's going to look angry. If you put them up like this, they're going to look sad. So what we are going to do is just basically no emotion, facing forward. Starting around where the corner of the eye is. Now I always think it goes a little bit wider altogether. It is thickest at the center and then fades as it gets out to the outside. And of course you guys can make your own choices as far as the shape and size of your eyebrows. If you want one that goes right across, you want a Frida drawing here, you can do that as well. But I'm going to start just sort of echoing that same eyelid shape and going across like so. There we go. We're doing okay here. We're doing quite well. Again, if you guys have any situation where I'm going too fast, then you can always stop and rewind. We're going to hit the hair up here. Now I have a couple suggestions when it comes to hair and some things that you might want to stay away from. I think the first thing that we're going to show you, and this is only for people who have hair that's pulled back or hair that is very short. This is the hairline. Now the hairline comes down about 1/3 of the way from the top of the head to the eye line. So that's where the hairline starts. If you were to draw hair, even if you thought about doing a mohawk, if you drew that and it just started at the top of the head like this, you would look like a carrot or a pineapple. So we want to make sure that even if you have a mohawk, you're going to be coming down to the front of the hairline, and that's where you're going to start, like right there. Again, this is going to be visible only for people with short, very short hair, or your hair is pulled back, like say in a ponytail. Slight arc to the hairline as it goes across, and then it's going to step down and sort of frame the face on each side like this. And then it's going to step back, and then it's going to go sort of down just to connect to where the ears are. Okay? And so a slight arc across, step down, step back, and then go to connect to the ears like that. Okay? And again, that's just for someone with very short hair. I'm going to show you, well, my suggestion for hair is don't draw every strand of hair. Look for value first. Even if your hair is very long, there's going to be spots where like you could, your hair is not going to receive light very much. So this, I'm going to draw sort of like a longer hair on the left here, and sort of have like, let's do a side part. You can do a part like this. And remember, the hair is not stuck to your scalp, that it does have volume, so it's going to go beyond the headline. So if you are beyond the headline like this, that is okay. Let's have it swoop gently down in front like this. And so that's where we would erase the head, the hairline and the headline. And say we continue on like this. The hair is tucked back behind the ear, so you might have a concentration of value right there. You would definitely have a concentration of value under the ear and to the side of the neck. Now we are going to include the neck, so don't go too crazy yet. But there would be less light back here, so this would be shaded. Now again, I mentioned at the very beginning there, not to draw every strand of hair, to just draw the important value shifts. So what I'm doing right now is hitting some spots that would receive less light perhaps, and that's going to give it some like volume. It's also going to give it some texture with the directional lines that I'm using. I'm using a technique called hatching right in here, and you can cross hatch as well to give it some softness if you're going for that. But just a couple strands and not all of them is going to be way more effective than trying to draw every single strand of hair. So again, my advice to you is don't draw every single strand of hair, draw the major value shifts, then add strands for texture. Okay? I'll let you decide whatever hairstyle you'd like to do there, and you guys can continue that. And if you're drawing curly hair or hair that has more texture, you can use a lot of directional lines, like adding, ringlets. Or you can do braids, or if you were to do a ponytail, it might be visible back here and go backwards, but you would only see the top sort of crest of it back there. Now let's move on to the neck. That's our sort of final area here. Then we're going to touch a few spots of shading that are important, and then we will be done. Okay, again, adding a little bit of value just to get the indication of some shading here. Now, as the neck is added, what we want to make sure that we do is one final set of guidelines, dropping down from the exterior, the outside corners of the eyes. This is going to be our final guideline. That's where the neck starts. And I never really make it just a straight line. I kind of give it a little bit of bend, just to have a little bit more organic flow to the neck there. Now there are some things that are going to make this look specific to a gender. The long hair does make this look a bit more feminine, but there are some things that could make it look more masculine. If you squared off the jawline, like if you did this a little bit more, instead of having a soft corner there, if you made it a little bit more aggressive as far as the corner, the jawline could appear more masculine. When we get to shading, we'll add another part there. Now that is where the neck starts, so I'm going to shade a little extra around the neck with the hair, because that is generally not going to be a spot that catches much light. So the darker areas of shading around the hair here are going to be very important. As it relates to the shoulders, it would come down like this. The one thing you want to keep in mind is that shoulders aren't like 90-degree angles. They do have a slope to them like this. So that's going to slope down and go out for the shoulders on either side there. Now, let's start erasing guidelines, and what I want to do as our last final touch here is to give it some spots of shading that are important. Things that make it look more three-dimensional. You know that obviously adding value will create a little bit more realism, and it will create a little bit more three-dimensionality to the features that we've already drawn. So, where are those places most necessary? The first place we're going to do is the nose. I believe that the nose is the item on the face that comes off the face and needs to show that three-dimensionality. You can think of this as a sort of a simplified basic form, and that might help you. So check this out. If you go like this on either side, now a lot of people tend to want to draw the lines here. We are going to draw lines as guidelines, but we are not going to keep them in the final drawing, because what I'm doing here is I'm drawing simplified form of the nose in flat planes. So you can see that this side would be arcing up, as well as this side arcing up. The center would be left alone. We are not going to shade that. And when we get down to here, this is basically a sphere right here. And these are basically spheres as well. So we need to make those look somewhat round. To do that, I'm going to add a little bit of shading underneath, on the underneath side of the nostrils, and maybe even in the center as well, but I'm going to keep that fairly clean because it is going to be catching light. Now the left side's going to be a little bit darker. The right side's going to be a little bit darker. And we're going to leave that center panel alone. And in fact, we don't want really line to be the defining factor here. We want the value to be the defining factor. So I'm going to get rid of the outlines that I created by softening up with some eraser here and reapply some value here. And leaving the nose bone clean will show that it's catching light. So we want to leave that clean. In fact, obviously noses are all different shapes and sizes. You can include a bit of the nose bone shading if you want. If you want a little bit of a bump here, that would be good too. I'm going to use my finger just to smear a little bit. Don't go crazy with the finger smearing. I know that sometimes can happen. And actually what I'm doing is I'm extending the value into the eye sockets. Now your eyeballs are in sockets in your head, and they do need to appear as if they're set back slightly. So we're going to add a little bit of value right under the eyebrows to the eye sockets. And the thinnest part of the nose, I would believe, would be the nose bone right between the eyes. You can add a little bit of shading on the outside of the eye, because then that will actually make the eyeball look round within the eyelid there. So I'm just adding a bit to the outside of the eye, just a little bit, just a little slight indication there. And then underneath the eye, you know, generally there is some shading there, and you want to make some indication of shading there, but you don't have to go too heavy, because then it will age your person. In fact, if you wanted to make this person appear younger, it's pretty well known that children, if you were to draw a portrait of a child, there would be almost no defined nose bone here, because that doesn't come until later. A little bit of shading under the nose as well for that little lip indent, the Cupid's bow area. A little bit of shading there, not too much, just a little bit. And again, I'm trying to make value the defining factor here, not line. You know, I can have a little bit of indication there, but you want this to be all just shading, not specifically like hatching lines. The lips. The bottom lip always catches more light than the top lip. In fact, I just go and shade the whole top lip, and that tends to be enough. You know, that will be enough. That shaded top lip shows that this is you know, coming off the face slightly, but the bottom lip is the one that catches the light. Okay? And then underneath the lips, you might have a little bit of indication of shading. Just because that top lip comes forward, then you have the complement of the shading under it to add to that three-dimensionality. You might have, you know, sort of a dimpled chin like this. You might not. You can keep that unshaded if you like, because the neck is going to be set back by a little bit of shading as well. So let's go ahead and continue right onto the neck. Don't go too heavy with the shading here, or else it'll look like a neck beard. You don't want that. Okay, looking really nice. We're going to also add a little bit of shading just to the forehead. I'm going to put a little bit on this side here and a little bit on this side here. And what that's going to do is it's going to appear to have the forehead look a little rounder. Final area to add would be cheekbones. You can accentuate the cheekbones by adding just a little bit of shading underneath. And you don't have to go too heavy here, and in fact this might be one of those spots that might appear to make it look a little more feminine, and that's okay. So there we go. I'm pretty happy with this drawing. If there was anything I might change, I might just spend a little bit more time creating the hair here. But I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to continue the hair down to the shoulders. And this will be good. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Remember, if you need to, at any point there, pause and rewind the video. But there is your forward-facing figure with shading.